And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to... And the Oscar goes to...
And the Academy Award for Best Picture.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Awards Watch Oscar podcast. It is the big one. It is the final Oscar winner predictions podcast. It's been a long and bumpy season, and we're finally here, or almost here. I have a very special guest with me today, and it is Joanna Robertson, the senior writer for Vanity Fair. Hello, Joanna.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I am super excited to have you here. And offline, we were just talking about how local each of us were to each other, and kind of came as a surprise. So it's kind of great. It's like a little sisterhood of the Traveling Pants today.
Who knew that Northern California was hosting so many award season opinions?
It's a hotbed of Oscar talk. Wine and Oscars. That's pretty much Northern California in a nutshell.
There you go.
All right, so we're gonna get right down to it. This has been, we thought last year was a little crazy at the end of the year. This year is also going to be a bit of a nail biter right to the opening of that last envelope. And all jokes aside, hopefully everything goes as planned. But we have a real race, and then we have other things that are so locked in, it's almost, not even worth talking about potential spoilers. But I think we'll do that anyway, Joanna. Right. And that would mostly be in the form of these acting categories, which are breaking like statistics in history left and right. The four frontrunners, which are Gary Oldman and Frances McDormand, Sam Rockwell, and Allison Janney, have won every single televised precursor, which is Critics' Choice, Golden Globes, Screen Actors Guild, and BAFTA, leading up to the Oscars. That's never happened before. And even though Critics' Choice and SAG both they're like at, less than 25 years, that's still a pretty crazy statistic to happen. And most especially for these performances, which I think is the thing that has kind of surprised everybody. Would you agree that it's a little bit that these performances might be the surprise to do it?
Yeah, I mean, after last year, everything feels a little bit less predictable in a good way, right? And I don't know if you read, Vulture this week published a couple great pieces where they interviewed anonymously some of the newer, younger members of the Academy, which has been a variable that we've had to consider the last couple of years as the Academy makes a huge push towards including younger members, more women, more people of color. The idea of what a quote-unquote traditional Oscar voting body will do has sort of been up in the air. Or the other question is it really up in the air? Are there enough young new members to make a difference in the monolith of, older straight white men? And we won't know the answer until Sunday, but I suspect we won't see many deviations off the path that you were talking about that's been laid out, Yeah,
and one of the interesting things from that article was that Gary Oldman still was the leader over Chalamet. Even it was only by one vote, but still. And because I think there's this, like you said, we've been really kind of focused on these new members and what are they going to do? And they're young, so that means that Saoirse Ronan and Timothée Chalamet are going to win, and it doesn't. It's an assumption that a younger voter is automatically going to go for something younger skewed. Just as much as it's, an older voter is only going to go for, Darkest Hour.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's definitely variations up and down the board, and we don't know who. I think they spoke to, I want to say, 8 or 9 members, younger members of the Academy. So that's not very many in a body that's like over 7,000 people or something like that. And we don't know which of the younger members they talked to. So we have, there's no way of knowing the full context of that. But I was surprised by some things I found in there, like a lot of vitriol from younger female voters, or not vitriol, that's too strong, against Greta Gerwig. It really disappointed me. Like, I think it's fine to not vote for Greta Gerwig if you didn't think that Lady Bird was that, that the pleasures of Lady Bird were not found in direction. Like, that's fine if you don't want to vote for Greta Gerwig. But some of the remarks were a little snide in terms of like, oh, well, they just needed to have a woman in this category, so they picked Greta. And I as a huge fan of Lady Bird, do not think that's accurate or fair. And I it's something that I would expect this specter of the older, entrenched Oscar voter to say. And so for them to say it, I was pretty astonished and disappointed.
I completely agree. I'm also a huge fan of the film, but I have between that and a couple of people I know that have expressed some anti-Lady Bird sentiment from a point of view that I was absolutely shocked to hear it coming from, is really unfortunate, especially the directing comments that, oh, anybody could have directed this, or this isn't a movie that really needs direction. And I think of Terms of Endearment in 1983, which is a mother-daughter drama that has a lot of comedy and a lot of drama. It won Best Picture. It won Best Director. There was no comment like, oh, this isn't an Oscar film, or this isn't the type of film that should even have a directing nomination. Huh. So I will push back on any anti-Greta Gerwig deserving a nomination commentary that I can find, because I think it's really bizarrely unfair.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think she deserves a nomination. I think she deserves the win. If you don't, that is absolutely fine. There's maybe something else you're looking for in a director. But to say she doesn't deserve to be there, or that the only reason she's there is some kind of like female tokenism, is unsettling to me. I will agree that I think there are some people who were nominated in the last few years, and maybe especially this year, out of a response to some of the backlash. I'm gonna paint a big like, it's controversial to say, you don't even want to say it, but like I'm gonna say that like I think it's insane that Octavia Spencer was nominated for Shape of Water in a role that like does not do any credit to her prodigious talent. She's very talented. I'm not mad that she has an Oscar, but like it seems like Octavia Spencer is a person that the body, like Meryl Streep, like the body is just like, oh, we should nominate Octavia. You know what I mean? And it makes us look a little bit less, completely whitewashed. And the same is true of like this Denzel Washington nomination. I'm like, nobody saw this movie and nobody's talking about this movie. Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out. Yes. I mean, like, yeah. I think I love that nomination. I'm so happy about it. I think he is a really underrated key part of why that movie is so successful. But like some of the other nominations, and I know this makes me sound like potentially racist or like a crazy person or whatever, but it just, it feels like the voting body is nervous to face the Oscars So White backlash, which they should be, and instead of digging deeper into finding better roles for people of color, like they've just been nominating some award staples instead. Does that I don't know, that just
no, I think you nail it on the head, and especially by pointing out those two examples. Both are, previous winners, but they are really, really lazy nominations. Yeah. They are sort of as lazy as Meryl Streep is, and it's kind of in a name-checking kind of way. And, don't send me hate mail about saying something mean about Meryl Streep, people, because I love Meryl Streep. I dressed as her for my Golden Globe party, so just like
Did
calm
you?
down. Yes, I bought a gold caftan, and it was flawless and incredible. It was amazing.
No, that's amazing. I want to see photos of that.
I did put it on Twitter, but I'll send it to you privately later.
Okay.
It was really awesome. But yeah, there was a lack of willing to go outside of a very safe safety zone in putting Washington and Spencer in there. And weirdly enough, I mean, I think Roman J. Israel is a really terrible movie, but I think some of what Washington does in there is some of his like most interesting work in a long time, because he's somebody that for me just kind of like sleeps through performances. But
for a while now, I agree with you that he has
Yeah.
been sleeping through performances, and to be entirely fair to everyone involved, I have not seen this movie, and so like that's really unfair to me to be like, he doesn't deserve that nomination. I mean, the thing is, Denzel Washington, you're right, when he's awake, like he's a phenomenon. He's an acting genius, like he is. And so like if the voting body saw that film and they're like, oh my God, Denzel Washington woke up, this is amazing, I could understand that a little more, I guess. But the Octavia Spencer thing, I was just like, I just need Octavia Spencer to stop being cast as like maids. Like, find something better for Octavia Spencer to do, please. Thank you very much. And
well, she does have that on the way, and you can partially thank Jessica Chastain for that. But Spencer does have some lead and co-lead roles finally coming down the pike, and I'm super excited for that.
It's great.
But I mean, there was a fantastic opportunity to nominate Hong Chow, who got SAG and Golden Globe nominations for Downsizing. Downsizing is not a good movie. It's a really bad movie.
She's good in it.
Every single thing that she does in it, though, is so exceptional and would have been very deserving.
Right.
So it's that I agree with you. I think there were a lot of missed opportunities to break out and branch out. But I think that's a perfect example of what the Academy is as a whole. Really wanting to branch out with new and progressive stuff, but also very, very careful and safe too. And it's sort of fighting against itself right now. I mean, we're going to see Gary Oldman win for this makeup and fat suit performance that feels like a very old school win. It's going to actually mirror in a lot of ways Meryl Streep's Thatcher win. It'll be that and makeup.
I'm still angry about that.
Yeah, and it's just a hammy, just kind of like whatever thing. And when people say he disappears into that performance, I'm like, I've seen the movie now 3 times, because I'm now doing I'm a completionist, so I've seen everything, and now I can rewatch stuff and maybe, see things from a different point of view. And he is good in it, but I can see him, I can feel him pretty much the whole time. There's nothing like extraordinary about it, because I already know that Oldman is a great actor. Which is why something like, Daniel Kaluuya or Timothée Chalamet is a really great thing to see, because it feels so new, because you don't have the baggage to attach to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. There's no baggage. At the same time, like, I do understand the people who are like, Timothée Chalamet should be grateful to be nominated since he's so young, and Gary Oldman has put in the years and the work and stuff like that. And that's true that there are a ton of amazing Gary Oldman performances. I feel the same way about, Sam Rockwell. Neither of those would be my first choice to win, but if I can try to think of them more as like legacy wins, which is exactly what you're sort of arguing against, is like legacy wins is maybe not the direction we should be going into. But if I can see Sam Rockwell's win for a film that I really disliked, but if I can see that as a reward for all the other movies and roles he's done that like I have found incredible, then I don't have as much of an issue with it. That being said, if there was gonna be a legacy win this year, I really wanted it to go to Willem Dafoe. Like that's who I really wanted to see rewarded for all the incredible work he's done. doesn't have an Oscar. He's definitely a person who should have an Oscar, and so I'm sad that I thought he had it, like, because he was winning all these before the televised shows that you mentioned earlier. He was winning all these critics awards, and I was like, this is it. I mean, we got it. It's in lockdown. Laurie Metcalf and Willem Dafoe. This is it. It's happening. And then Hollywood's like, guess what? Critics don't vote for these awards. We do. And they decided to back Allison Janney and Sam Rockwell. So that feels like the cemented best. I mean, everything in the acting categories just feels completely locked up in a really boring way. So
yeah, I'm with you on Willem Dafoe, and his trajectory has really gone like nobody that I've seen in quite some time. From being like, oh my God, this is gonna be totally locked, and they're gonna love Florida Project, and then it didn't happen. Yeah, I mean, Dafoe has 26 critics wins to Rockwell's 14. Metcalf has 27 to Janney's 12, and it really changed. This was the strangest season, where it was almost like politics, where you had the top tier critics come out first, the LA and New York, and they went, with their Lady Birds and Defoe's and Metcalf's and the things that were starting to lead the way.
Yeah.
And then the regional critics came out, and everything turned, everything changed, and the votes were different. And it was such a strange thing to watch. Like in Best Actor, Chalamet was by far out front and leading. And then regionals came in, and Gary Oldman completely stole that and ended up with the most critics wins of the season. And I think there's a certain amount of visibility that was happening and not happening with a lot of films, especially with Call Me by Your Name. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just agreeing with you. It's I don't know. I don't know if it's more of that thing we're seeing in the broader culture where people are talking about a greater and greater divide between the critical body and the fans. I don't think of Oscar voters as fans; they're industry members. But it does seem like the critical groupthink is getting further removed from either the general populace who goes to see films or the industry that's voting in Hollywood. And I don't know what that's about. It might be an influx of younger people in the critical community. Like Lady Bird and Call Me by Your Name, and Get Out, I would all consider sort of like young skewing films. But I don't know. It's fascinating. I mean, it does at least make that section of the race unpredictable, but it has been kind of incredible to see the way that the acting categories have just been locked, as you said before, in a way that I don't recall. And so the big mystery then for us is Best Picture. And Best Picture even... sorry, I was going for you to talk. Best Picture even is... I almost wonder if we're creating more mystery around it than it actually, that we're like, oh, it might be Dunkirk, oh, it might be Get Out, when really it's just going to be Shape of Water, or it's just going to be Three Billboards,
Yeah. I think so, and I think this happens almost every year. It happens when the race starts to get stagnant, and, pundits have to talk about something.
Right.
And they have to write about something, so they have to create narratives and conversation, even if it's not necessarily realistic. But I do think that this year it has called for that. Last year with La La Land, the only real conversation to have was like, oh my God, is this white man saves jazz backlash going to take hold? Which was so tiny and like a nothing. And when there was a much different conversation going on that we weren't having, clearly. But this year is a lot. I agree that, if it ends up being Three Billboards winning, which is my alt and completely realistic, then yeah, there's no one's going to be like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming, because it has, everything but one thing in its favor. and so if it wins, I don't think there will be much of a surprise. I think we have heard lots of commentary that some voters don't like it, but a lot of these ballots, I'm not really seeing that so much. I don't think McDormand or Rockwell are losing, so it would be strange. It's going to be a very strange makeup of where these wins fall, because again, we're not really going to see any type of sweep of any stretch of the imagination. Go ahead.
I also want to say that, you and I are so in it. We've got these podcasts that talk about award season. So, like, we're in it all the time. And we're also, like, the kind of film fans, I think, who try to, you just said you're a completist. You see everything maybe multiple times. And I try to see everything at least once, even though I didn't see Denzel Washington's Oscar-nominated performance. But I was talking to a friend of mine who used to work in the industry. She used to work down in LA, and she's up here in Northern California now. But she was saying, and she likes the Oscars, but she was saying how much she hated this year because she felt like all these smaller films that were nominated, nobody saw. I mean, it's the thing that people talk about, like, that we need to nominate, we being not you and I, but like they need to nominate more films that people have seen to get people actually engaged in the Oscar race. And my friend's point, and she's not like a blockbuster chasing popcorn muncher, like she's someone who likes film, but she was like, a lot of people haven't seen Call Me by Your Name or even Shape of Water or Three Billboards, and so they don't have any horses in the race. And so versus when we all watch Titanic win or something like that. And the thing that I've been chewing over about this is just, it's not just that the Academy is increasingly nominating maybe these smaller films like Moonlight or what have you that people don't see, but also that the mid-level award season movie that everyone goes to see in the holidays is sort of non-existent anymore. I mean, we've got on this list, we've got Dunkirk, which came out in the summer, but that's certainly a movie that a ton of people saw. We've got The Post, which actually not that many, like, it didn't perform super well at the box office, so not that many people saw it, despite the fact of Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, and Steven Spielberg. And I feel like the era of films like Shakespeare in Love or Good Will Hunting, or I'm just talking about Miramax films now, but like where everyone would go see these movies, like they did well at the box office and everyone was talking about them, and so then somewhat invested. Whereas because people aren't going to the movies as much anymore, they don't, and studios are reluctant to make these mid-level for adult movies. That level of attention to the Oscar race, that's one of the reasons why it's falling off, I would say.
That's a really interesting point that you bring up, because literally yesterday I published an article called Why Should I Care About the Oscars? And it wasn't, me as in, why should I care about it? But really kind of trying to talk for people that are fringe, movie fans and Oscar fans, where they get to the, the award shows, the Globes and stuff, which, those are in January, and some things haven't even gone wide yet, where, like you said, they don't have a horse in the race. They don't have anything to root for. And I sort of liken it, to people that watch, football and basketball games and that are fans, and they have their team and they use the royal we. And it's a level of camaraderie. You go to an Oscar party with, 10 or 20 people, you have your sections of your favorites. But if the movies aren't out in time, there isn't that that part is missing. I think it's reflective in the ratings that go down every year because of that. In the much older days of the Oscars, they were in like the end of March or mid-April, because it was before screeners and all of that, so the access wasn't there as much. The box office windows weren't 2 and 3 months long,
Right.
So movies would be in the theaters for like 6 and 9 months,
Yeah.
so that people could see them and develop. Things could actually earn box office and build fan bases, and that era is so far gone now, and I think that's part of why people kind of don't care as much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want us to torpedo our own brand since we like have awards podcasts, so like people don't care but like yeah, it's true. I mean, it's hard for me to tell how much people ever cared in the first place because I think I always cared a little too much, but
Yes.
It's when just movie going habits have just changed so much, and the way in which people who consume culture have changed the way that they look to critics to guide them or look to awards to guide them. I think more and more they're making decisions based on social media or whatever it is, and so I don't know. All that being said, I definitely have, like, I've decided, the podcast that I host for Vanity Fair, Little Gold Men, we did our predictions already on air, and
which is an awesome podcast, by the way. If you're not listening to it, it's probably the best in the business. So just, yeah.
That's very kind. It's my role, as you might have already been able to tell, is sort of color commentator because my 3 co-hosts are much more informed about everything, and they go to all these events, and I'm like, well,
yeah,
speaking for the common person and here in Oakland, California. But last year I was stumping for Moonlight when everyone else was saying there was no way it was going to win, and so this year I decided to do something similar, which is just like go with what I care about, because like even though I know it's not gonna happen, why else would I go into watching the Oscars not rooting for the thing I care about? It's like the clearest Oscar memory I have, just aside from the envelope gate of last year, is 1998, I guess it was, the year Titanic won, yeah. Right? And I was in high school, and I was really rooting for LA Confidential, and I was at an Oscar party. I guess as a teenager I went to Oscar parties. I was at an Oscar party at my friend's house. It was a bunch of teenage girls watching the Oscars, and they were over the moon excited that Titanic won, and I was so disgruntled and upset that Titanic won, and I really wanted LA Confidential to win. And that is that's like my first memory of being like, I don't know, outside the mainstream or stubbornly holding on to my critical opinion. But that's the thing, is like, why not go in rooting for the thing you care about? And we can make predictions based on numbers and stuff like that, but isn't it more fun to just like really care about something and root for it, even if it's a hopeless cause,
Absolutely. And I've always been a statistics person with this because I kind of had a thing like that too. I was also Team LA Confidential by a hilariously huge margin.
Right.
But I was really like emotionally invested in the Oscars and all of this stuff, and just like loved it ever since I was a kid. And then the Brokeback crash year just like severed that. It was like losing a limb.
I'm sure.
And my passion for it turned purely academic at that point. And so I did not let myself get like invested in anything. And so then I just looked at statistics at that point, and did for like the last 10 plus years. And then the last couple of years have been, kind of fun, and statistics start to fall, and obviously did tremendously last year. Last year was a great watershed moment, and my love of the Oscars returned. So I'm like passionate about it again. And for somebody that has relied on statistics so much to tell my story of predictions, I'm also could not be happier to have to rely on them less every year, and especially this year. I think it makes, your gut and your instinct more crucial. I mean, I know obviously if you are living in LA, you have your finger on the pulse a little bit more. I was just in LA last weekend, and you can tell who is spending money on what by the thousands and thousands of billboards in town. And it's Netflix and Focus Features. Oh my God, the amount of Gary Oldman ads I saw, I lost count. It was just like in the hundreds. And that's kind of, you have to speak directly to a voter. You can't just, assume that they're going to see something, know something, or want something. You kind of have to give it to them.
Right. Yeah.
And it's that kind of stuff I think that pays off better in predictions. But I'm also with you that I'm going more, not just what I want, but passion. I'm going on passion. I'm going on gut. And with that, we should probably say what our predictions are, since we're kind of talking around them. Sure. I am predicting Get Out to win.
Great.
Although, Three Billboards is right there, and if it does, there will not be a surprise. So,
I'm pulling for Lady Bird with no actual hope that it's gonna.
Yay!
But I've just decided to plant my flag where my heart goes. Mm-hmm. I will say a lot of people, I've heard Get Out from a lot of people, and I'm worried, and I don't mean this in a, I don't know, condescending way or whatever, but I'm a little worried that people are gonna it's like when there was this groundswell of oh my gosh, is Wonder Woman gonna get nominated for something? And I was sitting here thinking, there's no way Wonder Woman gets nominated for something. And then when it didn't, a lot of people are oh, hideous snub. And I was is it a hideous snub? I mean, superhero films are so rarely nominated, and I'm worried that people are not you, because you're more clear-eyed, but that some people are setting themselves up for disappointment when it comes to Get Out. That being said, I really have heard it from a lot of people over the last couple of weeks that Get Out, even though Get Out has not won any of these other awards, that it might do it, and that there's I don't know if you talk a lot about the preferential ballot on the show, but this concept of the preferential ballot, where Get Out could be consistently the number 2 spot, is really intriguing and could just throw a wrench in the whole thing. So
it is, and that's we could do a 3-hour podcast on the importance of the preferential ballot, which would, I'm sure, be so interesting to the
Very
fringe
popular
listener. But yeah, this is the reason why we're even having these, what's actually going to win conversation, is because of the preferential ballot. We don't have a plurality like other places do. PGA uses preferential as well, where Three Billboards lost to Shape of Water. It's kind of a close amount of members. The Academy has more because they've introduced 1,400 new members in the last 2 years.
Right.
But we don't have anything that we can say is a trend in any way, except for the Best Picture, Best Director split, which used to be something that was almost impossible to predict, and now it's happening every single year.
Right.
And it's really this second half of the decade of this use of the preferential ballot that's really doing that, where people are looking at achievement very much on an individual base. This isn't a Slumdog or Lord of the Rings or Titanic era of massive sweeps anymore. It's weird, but it's really not. That's kind of not happening anymore. So something with that is that the other category that is so closely tied to Best Picture is screenplay. And even though adapted screenplay is pretty locked up for Call Me by Your Name, anything else would be just like gut-wrenchingly devastating and awful and whatever. No offense to Mudbound, which I love.
Brokeback Redux.
yeah, really, very
Yeah.
much. The nominations in original screenplay, 4 or 5 of those are Best Picture nominees. 4 of them are in the top 5 of the Best Picture frontrunners. So, because this happens earlier in the evening, is it realistic to say that whatever wins original screenplay is probably going to win Best Picture? Or will there be a split? Because there hasn't been a split there in quite a few years now.
Really?
Yeah.
Between Best Original Screenplay and Best Picture
Between
winner?
at least one of the screenplays and,
Oh, okay.
and Best Picture.
Okay, so since Call Me by Your Name is definitely not winning Best Picture, so
Yeah.
we can just write the adapted screenplay category off.
Yes.
Then you feel like if something's going to win, it's going to also win original screenplay, and everyone thinks that is Jordan Peele for Get Out. But you're saying like if Shape of Water wins or if Three Billboards wins, it feels like a run all the way to Best Picture for that.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I always erroneously think of the screenplay as almost like a consolation prize of like, we're not going to give you Best Picture, but like we really like how this was written, so here you go, you can have this. But like, you're schooling me with this statistic of the 1-to-1 win ratio. I will be watching closely, I guess is all I can say. I think Get Out is the heavy favorite for that. But like I said, I considered that like here, Get Out, here's the prize you get. You're not going to get the big prize, but we'll give you this. And the same with Call Me by Your Name. I mean, I love Call Me by Your Name. I love Get Out. Like, to call either of these consolation prizes is to like sort of insinuate that they don't deserve them. They deserve them. James Ivory, dear God, deserves an Oscar. Like, it's crazy that he doesn't have one. But I guess I would be shocked and disappointed if Shape of Water, Three Billboards won, and then sort of, you're right, maybe feeling more confident that they might win Best Picture.
And that's kind of the thing where Three Billboards has, BAFTA and Golden Globe. It wasn't eligible for Writers Guild, where Get Out won, but that would have been really interesting, to see those two go head to head. So this is kind of going to be a big deal. Three Billboards is a very writerly screenplay that they have traditionally really liked.
Right.
There's a lot of profanity and a lot of ridiculousness. It's like a Tarantino light kind of screenplay. So,
I mean, Martin McDonagh is like, he's an award-winning playwright. Like, he is a writer, and that's like, of all the people nominated in that category, I guess Emily Gordon and Kumail Nanjiani, but I don't know. I don't think of them as writers. They're people I really admire. They're brilliant humans, and they've written their own life in a film, and so that's amazing. But if I look at that list of 5 names, or 6, Emily and Kumail, Jordan Peele, Greta Gerwig, Guillermo del Toro, Vanessa Taylor, Martin McDonagh is the writer for me. That's what sticks out because of all of his theater work. So if Three Billboards were to get that award, I wouldn't be that surprised, but I really hope it goes to Jordan, that category.
Yeah, I do too, and it's tough to look at I have my critics leaderboard that I compiled throughout the season, the same one that says that Willem Dafoe and Laurie Metcalf are winners, and Get Out by far has the most screenplay wins by far, and that was whether it was a critics group that broke up screenplay between adapted and original, or just gave a single screenplay win. It's just steamrolled. But since we've already seen a shift, between critics and the televised, which are some are industry and some are not. But rubber stamping happens a lot. It's certainly happening this year. I wonder if, Get Out and Lady Bird will just go home empty-handed because they have such a small amount of nominations, and, Call Me by Your Name is lucky that it was adapted and not original.
Right.
It will escape that with its 4 nominations. it'll be a little heartbreaking for me if Get Out loses. It is as much as Three Billboards is a sort of traditional screenplay winner. So is Get Out. Get Out is very much too, because it's so fantastically progressive, and oftentimes original screenplay is, like you said, sort of a consolation, but it's also the category where it's like, we sort of wanted to give you Best Picture, but we weren't ever really going to do that because we're going with something, more traditional instead. But here you go, because we really loved your script.
Yeah.
And I can see that. So I'm worried. I don't think Shape of Water has really a chance here.
I should hope not. I don't know. I would be happy for Shape of Water to win some visual effects awards. I thought it was visually very stunning. I think the script was pretty messy.
Well, it's pretty problematic considering the amount of accusations and allegations that have come out since fall, and even another new one, like I think last week.
Oh, you're talking about like the plagiarism, allegations. Yeah, I mean I've been reading these terrible, honest Oscar ballot voter articles that they do on the Hollywood Reporter, etc. And they're like hate reads every year, obviously. But like one actually very cogent criticism from one of them was sort of like how irritated they were about how Guillermo del Toro was treating the Shape of Water accusations, because it's sort of like, forgive me for going off on this tangent, but it reminds me of the way in which Noel Gallagher of Oasis fame would treat allegations of plagiarism. He would just say like, oh yeah, I lifted that bar from another song. Of course I did. That's how music works. Here's some money. You can have some money. I don't care. Like, yes, And so for Guillermo del Toro to be like, no, I definitely did not get anything from these other movies. And this, this anonymous Oscar voter is like, I know how many movies Guillermo del Toro watches. There's no way that he didn't like absorb some of this. And so if he could just say like, yes, of course I was inspired by, etc., that would just feel a lot better for me. But for him to deny any sort of influence is like, struck this particular Oscar voter is really disingenuous. And so I agree. Like, I don't think there's any shame in lifting and drawing from things that you've seen or read, as long as you acknowledge your sources.
Yeah, it is really strange because there are literally three distinct films or plays that The Shape of Water is lifted from. But in each case has been a categorical denial. And it's like, well, no, here's the timeline of when, Del Toro started. And it's just like you said, Del Toro is like the filmmaker's movie fan. The way that sort of, Kevin Smith and Tarantino were in the 90s and 2000s a bit. Where it's like, these are people that grew up and lived and breathed movies, and now, everything they do is still it's a love letter and homage to the movies that they saw and the feelings that it gave them. And that's awesome. It's one of the things that makes Del Toro such an engaging person and lovable person, and why he's going to win Best Director. But then to sidestep that and pretend that kind of doesn't exist is so strange.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And what's also true is that this is the first year that I can remember. No, I guess it started last year, and I think it's linked somehow to like our greater cultural retreating into our corners and either loving something or hating something. And I'm trying not to be that person, but like I feel so negatively about some of these nominated films that other people just love, and I don't get it, and I am frustrated by it. And the same was true. I liked La La Land a lot more than a lot of people who hated it, but at the same time, like I just got frustrated by the endless praise for it, and I was like, yeah, it's fine, but like Moonlight's so good, it's so good. And that's how I feel. That's how I feel about Shape of Water and Three Billboards, those are two movies, and I, Tonya, those are three movies that just did not work for me. And that's okay. Like, I'm not saying that the filmmakers are bad people or anything like that, and some of the, like, this is intensely problematic, like, that's not really my argument, though I definitely see it there. But I'm just like, how do you ignore the fact that Call Me by Your Name or Lady Bird are just, like, operating on a different level? And art is subjective, and but it frustrates me, especially this year, to feel so far removed from these two movies, Three Billboards and Shape of Water, which are getting so much praise, So
it's also been just a very, very, very strange year between post-election and Weinstein and Time's Up. There is a feeling of such black and whiteness with opinions, and when you're talking about movies, I think there is so much more gray, and there should be much more nuance. But it's like you like Three Billboards. How could you like it? It's super racist and totally horrible. And there isn't a middle ground there, which is such a different version of, like, what I was talking about earlier. About having your the movie you're rooting for and your team. You're like, I'm Team Phantom Thread, or I'm Team Three Billboards, and it's less kind of jovial and fun, and it's more used like as an attack now, and it's very, very not what it used to be. Yeah,
it's just movies, so.
Well, yes, but part of what I when I wrote the piece from yesterday is that I was calling back to when Moonlight won and what it represented, and what it was for like Adele Romansky said, a little brown boy or a little black boy or a little brown girl watching this show and feeling represented. It made me think of being a really, really young gay kid and watching the Oscars. And I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a really young person now and to have seen that and been like, oh my God, this is javalisation. So there's a weird connection, I think, that some people, not everybody obviously, have with the Oscars. The cynical and realist in me is like, it's not always, about the best. It's just about whatever reason that they want something to win. But then other times, I have the idealist version of that, and I look at the legacy of something. The legacy of Moonlight's win is going to be much bigger than maybe something like The English Patient, and I think that's a good thing. It doesn't mean that I think voters have to use that as 100% of the reason why they vote, but I have to think that there's a certain element of voting that happens that isn't purely here's what I like best, but here's why. Maybe.
Yeah. No. I think that yeah, you're right. That there are wins that resonate throughout history. I'm remembering like Oprah's Great Golden Globe speech, and she talks about watching Sidney Poitier win and what that meant to her as a kid. You know what I mean? And like exactly like what Moonlight winning. I mean, you were talking about the way in which your faith was sort of like forever crushed by that Brokeback Mountain loss, which just felt like intensely cowardly that year. And the fact that it lost to Crash is just forever.
Talk about a legacy that will, that will haunt them forever.
Yeah, forever a thorn in my side. But the social impact of Moonlight's win was so drowned in all the nonsense that came around it, like the envelope, like stuff. It would have been such a different moment had it not been for that unfortunate snafu. And so what would be that film this year? I mean, but that's the thing, is like your mileage may vary. Like I feel like
yes.
Three Billboards is this year's Crash, because I genuinely feel like it is trying to say something about race and gender relations in a way that like I don't actually think is at all deep or impactful, which is how I feel about Crash. And I feel like this year's Moonlight or Brokeback would be something more like Get Out or Call Me by Your Name or even Lady Bird, because the presence of Lady Bird means a lot to me, because it makes this notion of a young woman's story feel important when young men's stories have felt important for all of film history.
Exactly.
Do you know? And so like, yeah, maybe this is me being like too much of a social justice warrior or making these into issues films or whatever, but that notion of impact. And there are other films that can have impact. Like I consider Spotlight to be a really impactful win, because that film spoke to me about the importance of what some people in my field do. I don't consider what I do like that important, but like the importance of that industry. And I think that's why early on a lot of New York media was really rallying around the Post, because they thought the Post did something similar. That didn't land as broadly as it did for like people who live in New York and Washington, but yeah, I mean, and one would hope that Oscar wins would not only inspire the little Oprah Winfreys who are sitting at home watching, but also empower certain filmmakers to make more. They have this official stamp of approval. So it's like, okay, yeah, if Steven Spielberg were to win again for The Post, which he's not because he's not nominated, but if he were, okay, Steven Spielberg is going to make more movies. That's not that interesting. But like Barry Jenkins winning last year means that Barry Jenkins directed the Oscar-winning film of 2017, which means Barry Jenkins has a free pass to make some other great art, So it matters. I don't mean to say it doesn't matter. When I say it's just movies, I mean we shouldn't get like so angry about it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
Yes, no, and I didn't mean to jump on that as a negative thing, but I totally get what you mean, and that is for what most people it is. They're like, it's just movies, you guys. Why are you fighting about a movie? But I totally understand that. Oh my gosh, we've got an hour without actually giving very much in the way of predictions, and I kind of like that. It's kind of fun. I mean, you guys have done yours. I'm, posting official predictions tomorrow, which will be the Thursday before the weekend of the Oscars. So, that's when I think, people can mostly check them out. But I really wanted us to focus on picture and screenplay and just kind of be like, where is it going, and what is the Oscars now anyway, which is kind of much more fun to talk around and about than to simply list out predictions, which you can do, which you can just read anyway.
Right.
It's just much more fun that way.
Can I ask you for one prediction before we go?
Oh God, yes.
Did you watch all the nominated shorts?
Yes.
All right, I want your, because this is the category that people like blindly pick on their.
It is. Let's actually do like all of the shorts,
friends.
Because that's like the one that can win your office pool traditionally.
Exactly. Ever since I started doing Little Gold Men, the Vanity Fair podcast, like we watch the shorts every year, and I never watched them before, and now I'm like, oh, I'm actually an informed voter. So
it's mostly a really good year of shorts.
Yeah, it is. So documentary. What do you think?
I really think it's between two things, with a third as a spoiler. I think Heroine, the Netflix doc, is going to win. It is extremely contemporary. It's a fantastic film. It's perfectly titled.
Yes, what a clever title.
It is, and something I generally attach to the doc and the live action shorts is I look at them sort of two ways, not simply the subject matter, but I'm like, is this something that exists, solely within its shorter time period, or is this something that when it's done, I'm like, I want to see a full length, feature of this. So it's either got to kind of wrap itself up or leave me wanting more. So I think Heroine kind of does both. Plus, I know you guys, when I listened to your podcast, I think it was Richard that said, there's a built-in, or maybe it was Mike, a built-in role for Jodie Foster in case they want to make it a feature film.
That was Richard, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
He nailed it.
And definitely with the accent it was, but actually had thought of Helen Hunt first
yeah.
Which is her, oh God, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, but, I loved Heroine. I mean, Heroine is also my pick for sure.
It's a stunner, but I can also see Heaven is a Traffic Jam on the 405, which absolutely blew me away.
I loved it, yeah.
And it was so great because I didn't know anything about it. And I was like, okay, this title is bananas. And it starts, with her in the car. And I'm like, okay. Then we get what it is. And I can't recall seeing a subject of a doc that is so vulnerable with their illness, yet having such a full understanding of it, and getting to see her, in lucid moments and in deep, deep panic moments. I really have not seen anything quite like that.
Well, and also to have this built-in expression for like who she is, to have her art be part of the filmmaking, it's brilliant. It's so well done, so engaging. One of my other co-hosts, Katie Rich, she found it to be like kind of a hard, not that she didn't like it, but it was hard for her to watch. Like, it's challenging, and I think that's true. I mean, that's often true with these documentary shorts, to be honest with you. But yeah. But I just found it so. It's funny because like. I used to go to, it wasn't, I want to say, I don't think it was Spike and Mike's, but there was some like animation shorts festival that I used to go to in where I grew up in Mill Valley. And I'm sure it was like a touring thing. And it was before Spike and Mike's, but whatever it was. And it just reminded me of all these like old animation shorts that I used to watch. And, this is obviously like a much heavier subject matter, but the incorporation of her art, like watching her art be filled out almost as if it were animated, was just really, I think, elevated it beyond just like a straightforward talking to this woman about her illness, because she's not really, that's the other thing that film does. It, she's definitely like, you're right, like articulate and lucid in moments, but there's also things that like she's unwilling to confront that like the film just leaves there, like about her past. Mm-hmm. And, I just found that really, really remarkable. So
it's really something, and I do think a board's body of artists can might jump onto and recognize this other artist and really kind of go there with it. I think Edith and Eddie has a chance just from having Cher behind it and a PR team that is so aggressive. Oh my God, I get emails maybe every single day.
Really?
Like every day.
Wow.
It's a bit much, but it has Cher behind it, so that might happen. But I do feel like Heroine is an extraordinarily strong choice, and Netflix spends really more money than anybody at this. So. And
they won last year.
And they won last year.
Netflix stock won last year, so maybe they have this thing sort of. This whole thing set. All right, live action or narrative, whatever you want.
Yeah, live action.
Yeah.
This is tough because we've got 4 very serious little dramas and then 1 very short, tight comedy, which I know some people are picking. I'm picking DeKalb Elementary, and I know it seems sort of crass that the timing of the voting of this school shooting live action short happened right after Parkland. And it's not, not everything that is topical and political automatically makes it, the thing to choose. But there's something about the film that is, it's just basically a two-hander. It's 2 people acting back and forth, Great performances from both, but it does what a lot of movies can do and sometimes should do, and that's offer a little bit of wish fulfillment in a situation that does not have that most of the time in reality. And I mean, I hope people watch the film or have seen it. I don't really want to say much more than that about it. But it's a very powerful little movie.
Yeah, I agree with you. At the same time, I think this other film, All of Us, which has a different title,
Watu Wote.
That was my favorite in terms of like a really clear, compelling arc. Like felt like it told a full story. DeKalb Elementary is like you're right. It's like so piercingly topical, but at the end of the day, it is like it felt more stagey, more like a play, or even just a scene work than it did.
That's a good point.
Than it did a movie. Whereas Watu Wote, which like, you know, takes us on a actual journey, felt a little bit more cinematic and a little bit more complete in the story that it was telling, which is a sort of similar story, which is that we're all in this together, you know? So
yes, and there's a great
similarly,
topicality.
Similarly upsetting about, you know, so.
Yes, and I've been going back and forth between DeKalb and The Silent Child for the reasons that you're predicting Watu Wote, in that I think The Silent Child visually is the most cinematic movie, and it looks super...
The most polished.
Oh my God. It looks super professional. And that was the example of the movie where when it ended, I was like, I want a feature film of this, because that's not the end of this story. Even though it ends, I felt like there could be more. It's almost a little too wrapped up, I guess.
Well, and what my Little Gold Men co-host sort of reacted negatively to was this PSA almost that's at the end of it. That then it feels like a PSA because it's got like a little bit of a message about you know, its subject matter at the end. That didn't bother me. Like I got really emotionally invested in this movie, and that little girl was just like really just killingly like compelling. So I wouldn't be mad if Silent Child won at all.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that benefits all of these movies. Well, most. I was pretty unimpressed with My Nephew Emmett, honestly.
Yeah, it was odd. Like I was ready to be excited about it, or not excited, that's the wrong word, but ready to be like really swept up in it. And it had the only actor that I recognized out of the entire, well, no, that's not true. I know the 11 o'clock actors, but like, you know, Jasmine Guy's in it. And I was like, someone I recognize. And then I was like, what, why is this so nothing? Why does this feel like nothing? You know?
It was honestly for me that with that movie, it was the white actors that had to, you know, say all of their horrible racist things and act, you know, like terrible racists that I did not really buy.
I felt the same way about Mudbound, to be honest with you. But you know, yeah.
There's always a strange thing with that where it's like how if you're a white character playing an extreme racist, the things that you have to say to somebody else. How do you do that without looking or feeling like you are really, really into it? I mean, you can't really be method like Daniel Day-Lewis and then go and, you know, join a racist cult and then go, okay, now I know how to be a racist. You kind of, I felt like they were pulling their punches a little bit and kind of just saying words. So it didn't really feel. It was really weird. It's such a strange thing to evaluate in that way, but it's kind of how it came across.
All right, animated.
Oh my God, this is actually a really complicated category.
So you're not like all in for Kobe Bryant?
Oh, I'm predicting it to win. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't want it to, but I'm predicting it to win. Yeah.
well, here's the thing. Someone pointed this out to me, and I didn't realize it, and I felt dumb for not realizing it. Like we were basing some of our predictions off of like where things were ranking in Gold Derby, and someone on Twitter pointed out to us that all the top shorts on Gold Derby are the alphabetically top shorts, which is how things are just automatically ranked when you select your picks on Gold Derby.
Yeah.
And so DeKalb Elementary, Edith and Eddie, and Deer Basketball are all the top of the list alphabetically. And so this person's like, this often happens with Gold Derby that people haven't seen them and don't know what to vote for, and so they just sort of leave them in order. And that never occurred to me, and it sort of blew my mind. So
it is. It's your selections are on like the left side, and they're first ranked by their odds, and then alphabetical. So yeah, if you have 5 things that are already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's weird because it almost is like a mock voter ballot. You're like, am I going to be lazy and just pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah.
So that can absolutely happen.
I'm not trying to expose the entire Gold Derby operation. I believe that in most categories, like people are voting, but I of all the categories that I feel like people just don't do the work and sit down and watch it, I cynically think that a lot of people don't watch the shorts. So,
which ironically takes the least amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, but it can be a very harrowing experience. I have come around to this. I don't think this was my initial vote, but I am now on Team Garden Party.
Oh my God, that's like in last place for me. Although I think Lou should be in last place because it's just so terrible.
I don't think it's terrible. It's just like it's a Pixar short. I don't know. Like it's a fine Pixar short. I loved Piper last year. Like Piper,
I loved Piper.
One made me cry, and I thought it was so beautiful. And this is sort of like the lazy end of the spectrum of what a Pixar short can be. And so I don't think it's terrible, but it's just sort of like, oh yeah, this is a cute little cartoon thing that went in front of another cartoon. Do you know? Like that's how I feel about it. I don't feel like it elevates anything.
No, it certainly lazy is the right word. It just felt so just back to the same Pixar well.
Right.
I mean, the baseball eyes looked like Wall-E, and I was just like, you know what? I don't really care about any of this at all.
Yeah. It's
the same story over and over again. I don't know. It was just kind of meh. I liked Negative Space a lot more than some of the folks on Little Gold Men. I thought it was really quite moving, especially the end. But it was really hilarious because I watched it and all of them like just before I went to LA, so I packed my suitcase.
Yes,
like they did in the movie.
With the plastic bag and the shoes on top?
Yes. I was like, why have people never done like this? I put my shoes in bags before, but It was just like, it was just such a weird thing, and I did it, and I'm like, okay, this kind of stuck with me in a weird way. So I have that at number 2, because I just think it's super, super creative. My thing with Garden Party is obviously the ending.
It's just the way you say it. My thing with Garden Party with like so much disdain. That's like...
and it's too bad because like the first 15 seconds I was like, this is the best computer animation I've ever seen in my entire life.
It's so good.
I was like pausing and just looking, and it was so gorgeous. And, like you guys talked about, it's like this cute sort of, not really like maybe it's a romance, but I'm not really sure, but this like sort of like da-da-da-da-da, and it gets a little bit darker and darker until, this big reveal at the end, which you can see coming. It's not like a huge surprise, but it was just it was so over the top ugly when everything else had been so focused on how kind of pretty and beautiful they could make something. I don't know. It was It was so strange.
Yeah. I hear you. I think I'm just trying to focus on the frogs, and that might be my general Oscar motto: focus on the frogs, Joanna. Focus on the frogs.
Yeah. So there we go. All
right, there we go. I think we cleared that up for everyone. Great.
I love it. Best Picture and the shorts. That's our Oscar predictions, folks. I love it. That's great. But no, you're right. The shorts are really, really great and fun to do because they can totally make or break. Especially in a year that might have some pretty obvious choices. But this year it's the shorts and Best Picture that's going to make or break your Oscar ballot this year. It's bananas. It's so crazy. But yeah, I think all right.
All right.
I think that's good. Joanna, thank you so much for joining me. And can you tell my lovely listeners where to find you?
Yes, you can find me in the Oscar trenches on VanityFair.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Wrote This. You can listen to our podcast, Little Gold Men, on any sort of podcast listening app you choose. And
it's awesome, so please do it. I love it, and I love everybody on it. And follow them all on Twitter, too, because they're great. And speaking of Twitter, I am at awards_watch. Awards Watch on Facebook and Instagram, and then, of course, awardswatch.com. Today is Wednesday, the 28th. Predictions will be out tomorrow, the 29th. Oscars are this Sunday, the 4th. So it's kind of a crazy week.
Yes.
And then, of course, as soon as the Oscars are done, it's ready for next season.
I will be at South by Southwest, which nice. I like days after the Oscars, I will be at South by Southwest, which last year produced, at least The Disaster Artist.
Yeah.
I don't think much else, but other Oscar stuff has happened there. Boyhood. Well, actually, I think Boyhood premiered at Sundance. Anyway,
yeah.
It's not a huge award season festival stop, but it's a really fun festival stop. So
yeah,
and a lot of great people got their start there, like Greta Gerwig and stuff like that. So
yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and enjoy the Oscars on Sunday. Bye-bye.